All right, Jenny here with Waxwing Sewing Studio, and we're here to talk about ribbing for the fielder and how to properly install this ribbing, measure it, and properly install it. So first, I want to show you, this ribbing is made by Merchant & Mills for the fielder it was designed for originally. So with that said, it does, when you go and you cut your pattern pieces, you'll notice that the ribbing pieces are like way wider than our actual ribbing. That's because this is for, the kind of ribbing that you would get like off a big roll, and you could do it thicker, for example, at the cuff than at the neckline, etc. But we're using the same ribbing for our sleeves and our neckline, and if you're doing the top, also for our bottom of the dress, of the top. So we're not going to look at all at the width of these pieces. We're just going to look at the length. So up here, I actually like folded the back bottom ribbing and the back top ribbing, those pieces in half. And then these are already measured. And I've marked my center notch there, and these are ready to go. So those are the bottom pieces. When you go to measure your ribbing, this ribbing, I like to, same reason why if you're hand sewing, you kind of like pull like some of the excess turn out of thread when you're hand sewing. You just want to give this a little bit of a stretch going across, to make sure that where it's kind of maybe gotten more bunched up on top as it sewed those different kinds of fabrics together, then it's, it's not overly crunched up at the edges. So I've done that. I'm going to look at my neck ribbing piece here. And when I cut for my size, I want to find one grain line here, and I want to follow it, even though it gets a little bit curvy through here, all the way across, because then it's not going to fray on me. So I'm picking out my vertical line that I'm going to follow here. And then I cut down along where that wants to go, and then down to the end. And then I have this nice line that isn't going to fray. So I'm going to use that as one side. And on the other side, I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to pick a line and cut. And then I'll do 2 of those for my cuff ribbing. All right, you get the idea there. And once I've got all my pieces cut at the right width here, or sorry, length, then I'm going to take my neck facing, or my neck ribbing. I'm going to make sure that I've marked the center seam here. I like to do this with chalk so I can actually see it. And then I'm going to go to my machine, and I'm going to quickly sew these 2 together. I want to also show you in your instructions, we're in here. We are not going to fold our ribbing in half. You're just going to leave it because it's already finished on this side. So all you have to do is go over and sew this at our regular 1 centimeter seam allowance. And then we're just going to leave these because they're not going to fray. We're not going to cut into them because we're not folding it in half. We're just going to leave it. And then we don't have to do this either. We're just going to go straight to this step. So I'm going to quickly go to my machine, and I'll be right back so we can pin this. All right, Jenny here, Waxwing Sewing Studio, and we are going to install our ribbing onto our fielder shirt that we're making. So I'm looking at my fielder. This is the front, and this is the back, right side. And I've just gone to my machine, and I've sewn my ribbing together. So I've got 1 continuous loop for my neckline ribbing, and I've made sure that I've marked from the pattern piece where my shoulder seams and my center front seam are as well on the shirt, because then it'll be easier to match up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up right sides together, my center back seam or center back notch with the seam that I just placed into my ribbing. And I'm going to use quilter clips in order to pin that down because it's a thicker seam. But if you don't have quilter clips, that's fine. You can also use regular pins. And then I'm going to just pin this. And then I'm going to, second, before I go and just try to do the shoulder seam, I'm going to find the center front. And I'm going to match up the center front mark with my center front notch. And then I'm going to pin this with the curved part of my pin facing like this, because we're going to sew with the linen down on the sewing machine. So now I've got this. I'm going to pull this in half like this. And then I can use my mark here to find my seam, my center shoulder dart seam. So I'm looking around and I found it, and I'm making sure that my little notched seam allowance is lined up nicely and facing towards the back, because otherwise it won't hang right. And I'm going to pin all of those things down together, like so. And then we'll notice we have a little bit of excess between each of our notches here. And what you'll want to do is you want to pull, like I just did, and then kind of hike it up and give it some curve, because this is going around your collar, right? So then I like to kind of walk my fingers over, line up, walk my fingers over, and then make sure that my triangle's tucked down there the way that it should be. And then I'll add another clip right here. And then when I'm at my machine, I should be able to pull and keep an eye on making sure that these stay lined up. But if I want to, I can stretch and use my fingers to hold the stretch, and then give myself one more little clip right there if I prefer. Same thing as I go from the shoulder dart seam to the front. I have this nice long space where I need to get this all lined up. So I'm just, stretching without stretching anything too much. I'm walking my fingers over to that shoulder seam, making sure that I have nice even stretch all the way across. And then where that lines up, I'm going to put my pin or my clip. And over here, we know this fits because we just stretched it, right? Use my fingers to kind of hold it in place. Do a notch here. That's looking pretty good. And then I'll go around and do the other side of this. Once you've done the other side, then I will meet you at the machine and I'll show you how to get this sewn.